Perfect. Okay, so we'll send the replay out as well. Last month, I had some requests to really talk a little bit about the science and the why behind it. And I have felt strongly for 20 something years now that the most important thing we can do is empower you to make choices in your life, not give you some sort of crazy regimen that you'll have to follow the rest of your life, some sort of strict, diet that you'll be on in order to keep the weight off, exercising 2 hours a day, but that we have a medical, science-based, evidence-based plan that empowers you to know how to make choices in your life and that's transferable to regular life, especially as you hit retrain and you start to reintroduce. So I wanted you to understand some of the whys. And I was going to actually, my focus today was going to be the why behind the specific eating plan. However, I really felt called to talk more about the science behind stress because of the crazy, crazy, crazy time we're living in. Now, along those lines, I want to thank all of you for your grace with the massive shift we've had to make over the last few months to being not seeing you physically in the spaces and learning how to reproduce how we hug you and smile and support you and are a part of your lives and doing the very best we can to connect with you that way. It is not an easy transition for you or for us. That's been one of the hardest parts of this, and it is the new world. And so we're learning how to do that. So hopefully you can hear the love and support over our voice, over phone and voices and videos and texts as much as in person. But anyway, so let's talk about stress and weight loss and what to do and how we do it and coronavirus. So one thing I'm going to tell you is probably stop watching, really limit your consumption of media and news. Now that is a personal choice, but I realized about a week and a half ago that I needed to really be aware but disengage. And so what I'm really trying to do is avoid the hysteria and hype around everything and look at what is the actual medical, the science of it. And so I actually get all the medical journals sent to me every day. And a lot of it, of course, is ongoing research behind coronavirus, what the risk factors are. So let me run through a few of those in just a moment. The first thing, however, I want to say to you is that you're not alone in this. Many of you are struggling with extra weight, lack of motivation, and this is the personal, spiritual, psychological piece of weight loss. It's not just a food plan we're throwing in front of you. It's that we change our mindset and how we think. And there's so much isolation, shame, judgment, guilt associated with this journey. And I know that personally. And I know that from many years of working with you. And so the first thing I want to tell you is no matter where you're at today, this moment in time, with what the last 3 months have looked like, we are there with you. You're not alone. It has been very challenging. Our team, some of us have gained weight. I've gained a few pounds. Our energy levels are lower. My friends are struggling. And, we call it, people are calling it the COVID-19 or the COVID-10 or the COVID. Well, that's a real thing. And there's some reasons for that. And I just want to share with you personally that this week and a half ago, I really had a realization. I've been working so very hard. I get up in the morning, I sit at my desk, I meet with team members all day long. I'm overseeing things. And then I, try and call it a day way late in the day and do some separation. And I realized I was getting really depressed without even realizing it and really sort of spiraling down. And it's important that you guys know that there's humanity in all of us and there's weariness and weakness. And I have to remind myself all the time, focus on what's important, focus on the long game, focus on the fact that this will end. And things we'll have a new normal. It'll be different, but we'll adapt to that because we're strong and resilient. And I'm actually just looking down at my computer right now, and I have a sticky note that is right there. And it says, if it costs me my peace, it is too expensive. So I'm reminding myself of that every single day right now. And I wanted you to know that before I headed into the science is I can guarantee that almost all of you on the line are struggling with this, with pieces of it. Many of you are starting to overcome, but we're together. You know, and remember when you signed up in this program, we said, okay, you're going to bounce around. Remember when we talked about a goal weight and we said, you know, there's that 5 to 10 pound window because that is normal. That is part of the game. And I can also guarantee that most of you are not doing as poorly as you think you are, because along with this comes, you know, that self-dialogue, that self-talk. And so I encourage you to get plugged into, I mean, you guys are on this call, which is a huge first step. Get plugged into Wendy's calls, get plugged into, you know, the Facebook group. The private Facebook group is awesome for suggestions, support, and, you know, also know that this is a lifelong journey. Studies show that the average woman in the United States has tried to lose weight 10 times in their lifetime. So this is a lifelong journey, and this is just part of it right now as we get to all the character building. I joke that all the character building we've built over a lifetime, we're using it now and we're needing it. And so all our love and blessings are on you. So now that said, the coronavirus risk factor, the largest study done to date shows that blood sugar control and weight and visceral fat are one of the biggest predisposing factors to severe illness. So it is real, and now is the time for you, your family, your friends, the people around you to really reorganize priorities and say, all right, my health is important to me. I'm not perfect, but I'm making steps in the right direction. And people that have poor glucose control, and what that means is, you know, that what goes along with having extra weight is that we become, you know, our insulin becomes poorly regulated. It really goes hand in hand. They've shown that people that have poorly regulated blood sugar are 3.5 times more likely to experience severe coronavirus infections. 77% of the people that are severely ill and hospitalized have pre-existing conditions. The two largest of those are cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and weight. Of course, that's related with weight. Excuse me. And so it is really important that we continue to understand the new world we're living in, is that our immune system is incredibly tied to our lifestyle, our weight, the way that we regulate hormones. And hormones is really what controls our metabolism. So our metabolism, most people would think of it like an engine, right? We would think, okay, it's like a furnace. It's how we burn. It's actually more like a chemistry lab is how I like to put it. It's this really, really complex web of hormones that interplay with one another to regulate our metabolism, to determine our health. And metabolism is not just about weight. It's about literally every illness under the sun. And so stress and weight loss and metabolism, how we eat, incredibly intertwined. So we're going to talk about stress first, because right now, actually, they're calling it a dual pandemic. And to me, it's really a triple pandemic, but the dual pandemic is coronavirus and stress. And that, I read a research study on Medscape the other day that they estimate 75,000 deaths will be directly related to what they refer to as deaths of despair during this time. And that is from depression, mental health issues, isolation, which we are not meant for, directly related to alcoholism, drug overdose, and poor mental health. And that's 75,000. So the stress is listed as a pandemic. And then the triple part of it is that stress causes us to gain weight. And, you know, we lecture you guys about stress, especially when you're plateauing. So one of the first things we look for in a prolonged plateau, or, because really most of what we would assume are plateaus are not plateaus. We're meant to stall, slow down, as over time, then we bump down again. Everybody has different patterns of weight loss. Some people will go in a slow, gradual, steady. Some people will, drop, stall, drop, stall, drops, more like a staircase. But with stress, when you see a very prolonged period of plateau, oftentimes stress is the number one factor. So let's run through a few things that we know. I'm very conscious of time. I don't like to have hour-long phone calls. I will try to be done talking. I usually say 20 to 30 minutes, and then open it up for a few comments, questions, some feedback. But let's talk about stress, especially during this time. So it's the triple whammy. Stress really predominantly affects our weight in three particular ways. The first thing it does is it increases our appetite. So think of that chemistry lab and the hormones. So think for a minute about the different brain chemicals we have. So some of those guys are what is referred to as, right, the happy hormones. So that's dopamine, that's serotonin, that's oxytocin. They're the happy guys. They're the relaxed, the chill guys. And there are proven ways to boost those things. So serotonin is the one most people know because that's the one responsible for depression, low levels of serotonin. That's what they, in antidepressants, they regulate serotonin levels in the brain. And dopamine is the craving guy. So that's the guy that makes you feel good. So I often joke, I'm a task-oriented person, so I joke that I get a dopamine rush when I check something off my list because it makes me feel so good. And actually, it's been proven that you do get a dopamine rush from checking something off your list. But there are things that give us dopamine rushes. Now, those guys are the happy, chill. Think about after you have a really, really, really good belly laugh, how you feel. So that's those guys kicking in. Or maybe a remarkably wonderful night's sleep. Or you watch a great movie. Those are the happy hormones that are kicking in. Now, the counterbalance to those guys, we can't live just off of those because otherwise we would just, be always in that state. So the counterbalance is we're designed for this beautiful stress response, right? So stress, we think it's bad. It's not. We need a stress response in our body. And the guys responsible for that are things like epinephrine, when we say adrenaline, noradrenaline, adrenaline, epinephrine, and cortisol. So think of how your body's designed, you guys. It's this beautiful, brilliant design, right? Those stress hormones aren't bad. They're hardwired into us to help us adapt to situations. We need those guys. But we're supposed to have quick bursts of stress where those guys kick into gear. And so I'm going to use a terrible example, but I grew up on Fred Flintstone, okay? And so Fred, I hope you guys remember the Flintstones, but think of he's running from a saber-toothed tiger. And he needs to employ that stress response. So what's his body going to do? It's going to amp itself up. It's going to tighten the muscles. It's going to get itself ready. It's going to send all sorts of blood sugar into the bloodstream. It's going to mobilize fat and sugar for energy. So that's a great thing. But then it's designed for a spike and then to stop and relax. And I hope I'm doing a good job of, I talk with my hands. You can't see my hands. Maybe next month I'll show you, we'll do video. But we're designed for spikes of that. So think of if you're in a car accident, if something happens to your child, you need to have that. However, in modern day society, what's happening? We're not doing this spike. So what we're doing is we're doing this chronic high level of that. So if the stress guys are, like a teeter-totter, if they're taking over and the happy feel-good guys are not, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to feed those guys because food, particularly high fat and high carbohydrate food, boosts those guys. So we set ourselves up for this increased appetite. this craving cycle because we're trying to counterbalance on the teeter-totter those hormones. So the more we can regulate stress hormones, the more we can regulate our appetite. The second thing, so that's the first thing it does, is it increases appetite. The third thing it does is it increases cortisol spikes. Cortisol is this great hormone in moderation, bad hormone in spikes and too much, because it increases belly fat. Basically, it's what we know increases belly fat, and it causes those stress spikes. And cortisol comes from what's called your adrenals. So a large part of your program is, particularly with the supplements, the creams, the drops, is designed as to stabilize and balance that stress hormone, particularly postmenopausal or menopausal. It also, stress makes unhealthy levels of estrogen, bad estrogens, which increase fat deposition. It decreases our natural, I hope I'm not boring you to death with all the science here, but it decreases our natural opioids. So everybody knows about opioid addiction. Our body has all sorts of natural opioids in it that mimic things like morphine and Percocet because they're natural. They're the feel-good guys. They reduce pain signals. So stress actually decreases the production of our natural opioids. So it completely slows our metabolism. It then the triple whammy part of it is the more fat we get. So as we get into unhealthy fat ranges, our fat actually starts signaling our brain to slow our metabolism down more and conserve. So it's this really vicious cycle that you get into. I promise you I'm going to talk about some good stuff in a minute, but you have to understand the why here. Because when we say to you, manage your stress, it affects your weight loss, it's not this nice, happy pie in the sky thought. There's real science behind this. And in fact, there was a study done on dieters over a 2-week period. What they did is they had them increase stress, so through a number of different stimuli, and decrease sleep. And they burned 55% less fat. 55%. And there was another study done that on average, women who reported one or more stressors during the prior 24 hours burned 104 fewer calories than a non-stressed woman. So it's the real deal. And never has it been more important than right now. So sleep has also been disrupted, and bad sleep. 50% of Americans report increased sleep disruption during COVID. And that goes along obviously hand in hand with stress and increases weight gain, anxiety, cardiovascular issues. So the hormones behind this are really important. What do we know affects hormones? Well, there's some proven ways to boost the happy guys and decrease, not the unhappy guys, but the fight or flight guys, the guys that will keep us in that chronic anxiety response. And I always joke, and some men and women that are married love this, but sex has been proven to be one of the #1 ways to do that. So I actually was doing a large corporate wellness program, and I talked about that, and a bunch of the guys put their hands up and said, hey, can you write a prescription for me for my wife for that? But sex is actually one of the ways. Healthy sleep obviously boosts those hormones. And a really key thing is mindfulness. This is sort of a new term in the world. I don't know if it's new. It's what I've been talking about for 20-something years. They've just finally named it. And that mindfulness really refers to paying attention to our brain, stopping, slowing, being conscious. And if anything, I would tell you, un-Americanize yourself. And I know you understand what I mean when I say that. Un-Americanize, right? The fast-paced production, more screens, And a lot of my stress tips are about mindfulness. And mindful eating is one of the most important things you can do. The piece of this program that I urge you to not gloss over is the big why, the mind piece of it, the what is this all for, the sitting down when we talked to you about chewing and sitting down. I'm telling you, there's 2 times that you need to ban screens. One is during eating. They have shown that non-distracted, mindful eaters that pay attention to their food intake, that taste their food, that enjoy their food, that breathe through it, that make a ritual around food, lose much more weight and are able to sustain that weight loss better than people that don't change those eating habits. And the second time to ban screens is before bed. So, stress and sleep. There's this nasty, evil thing in screens called blue light. So, in this new world, we're on screens all the time. Most of you can download a blue light filter, or your phone will have a setting, or your computer will have a setting to filter out blue light. I'm going to say do that today and ban screen time before bed. As tempting as it is, screen time before bed disrupts sleep cycles and increases anxiety and stress. And I can give you 30 research studies on why. And so before bed, and actually the research shows that if you reserve your bedroom for sleep and sex, your stress levels go down and your sleep improves remarkably. So banning screen time, having consistent routines and rituals around our self-care. And COVID, one thing it has done is, again, reorganize priorities for many of you. We've realized that health is first, right? So many of us have spent a lifetime focusing on others, taking care of others, careers, and now we know that it's really our health. Without any of those things, Steve Jobs destroyed his health and readily admitted it, and died with billions of dollars of cancer prematurely. Our health is our wealth. And so creating consistent routines around self-care. And self-care doesn't mean I'm going for a massage. It means I get up in the morning and I say, what am I going to do to nourish and feed my soul, my health, my body today? And along with creating those, and that may be a morning routine, which I readily admit that went to the wayside when I started working from home. And I've worked really hard to start to implement that. I have a journal. Journaling has been shown to improve weight loss. Tracking food, that's why we want you to track your food. Learning your rhythms. When am I hungry? When am I stressed? When do I crave? Creating a bedtime ritual, warm baths, reading, lavender. I'm telling you all this just as ideas. I'm not going to give you 10 things to do because each one of you on the phone is a unique individual, and you know exactly what does work and what doesn't. And you also know your reasons for not doing it. Your reasons, that you'll tell me why you can't do it. I have all those reasons too, and I have used those. But I will tell you that now is the time to look at this piece of our life that's called our spirit, our mind, our emotions, and our spirit, and preserve that piece, preserve that, look at stress. And, I love mindfulness apps. I love, 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 and I know I'm talking a lot because I'm really passionate about this piece of it. Because if people want to know how to keep weight off, it's changing the way we approach things. That's how to keep the weight off. It's one of the reasons why the food plan, we create flexibility, transferability, good food, because it's changing our approach. It's learning a new life. And and giving yourself the credit giving yourself the ability to say, I'm going to change how I look at myself, the permission to evolve in our journeys. I wish I had my 51-year-old brain in my 20-year-old body, but I don't. And so I'm giving myself permission to accept this evolution. It's really hard because, you know, I'm the kind of person that wants to do things right. It's what makes me a great doctor, nutrition coach, but it also disrupts my peace. So hopefully that, you know, my talking fast was helpful, but wanting you to understand this, to, you know, if I could say anything, just learn to love yourself. Know that you're doing so much better than you think you are. A study done, and this was 10 years ago, and I don't know why I was rereading it today, but French fries in the United States, French fries are one of the 3 most common vegetables given to infants 9 to 11 months of age. And the way that applies to us is that you guys, I mean, my goodness, we're in a health epidemic, obesity epidemic, and you guys are trying. You're doing so much better than most of the people out there. And I applaud you for that. And you know, when we say we love you, we mean we love you. And we mean we're behind you in this journey. I wish more than anything that I could go shop for you and cook your food and do all of those things, but I can't. But what I can do is support you in that process. And so I'm going to open it up for just a minute. I got a lot in 28 minutes. So I'm going to unmute. If you guys want to mute your phones, that would be fabulous. So that if people want to hop on and even just feedback or sharing part of your journey. Okay, I'll open it up for anyone.
Dr. Kell,